What's up, Barbarians? So at the start, check out how much HP we can actually have. We can comfortably hit over 100,000 with this build in terms of HP. So our build's going to be ultra tanky. And on top of that, it melts bosses very fast. This is going to be a tormented boss over here. And you can see how fast we can still melt content. It'll actually get outphased in phase 1 over here, and basically this build is not dead. I know a lot of people were thinking Barbarian's going to be dead because they're nerfing the bleed variant, but you can still play Whirlwind Barb in Season 5. So let's go ahead and hop right into some Infernal Hordes mode gameplay, and it's quite good at this. So for starters, let's go ahead and go over the skills as well as kind of what has essentially changed. So what they have done is they actually fixed one of the glyphs, which is the Twister glyph, allowing us to basically get the bonus to actually work, which is great. And on top of that, there's a lot of other bonuses that kind of just add a little bit more damage here and there. But the main change is that that essentially works now. And the Barbarian was already quite strong, so you're going to be able to handle all content in the game. So let's go ahead and get started with the skills. Now, I'm going to include 2 different variants in the pins for the planners. There's a little bit of different things that you can mess around with. The brand new Penitent Greaves are actually really good, and if you want to run those, because the build is so incredibly tanky anyways, you can drop a defensive aspect if you want to go ahead and actually get even more damage. But the 2 main changes that you can mess around with are either going to be Call of the Ancients or Wrath of Berserk on the skill bar, but they essentially function the same way. They give you more damage and more utility. So let's go ahead and just go over both of them kind of at once here. So how the skills work in terms of the gameplay, the first skill is going to be your ultimate, so it's either Call of the Ancients or Wrath of Berserker, but you just activate either one of them up as soon as it comes off of cooldown. And then we're going to be running triple shouts just because it's the best thing that Barbarian has had since the launch of the game, and well, it hasn't really changed. So triple shouts, you activate them at all times, and you can 100% upkeep them as long as you happen to have Harlequin. You don't need to have godly rolls, you don't need a greater affix with triple masterworking. It's just that would technically help out, but you'd be actually overlapping sometimes. You'd get it to activate more than necessary, but because it doesn't have a cast animation, it's no problem just to activate all of your skills at all times. However, if you do activate it in a group, you will get more of a benefit because one of them gives you more damage, and then they will all give you more cooldown with Bold Chieftain's aspect, which will really help out. But what it comes down to is you just activate all of them at all times. You don't even need the new anger management, which was originally thought to be one of the brand new really good things that everyone was going to play. If you need that, you can put it in either Edge Masters or Aspect of Elements. Feel free to go ahead and swap that in. This is actually a very important thing to have because if you don't have Berserking, your build doesn't really do that much damage. So the other thing that if you need to run this, it's Anger Management. You want to be at 100% uptime on Berserking. If you are trying to level up with this build, I would recommend you guys to check out my Bash build for leveling, as it's going to be a lot more beginner friendly because you just temper that on and you can kind of go. With this build, you need to be able to spam these in order to keep that up, but you could still play Whirlwind. It's not like it's impossible. You just gotta run a lot of pieces of gear with like Fury per second, so that would be in your helmet, your chest piece, as well as in your boots, if you want to use it earlier on. But it's kind of up to you on what you want to start off with while leveling, as this video guide is mainly oriented around endgame content here. But you just activate your shouts and upkeep them the whole time. So you activate this when it's up, and you activate all the rest of the shouts when they're up, and then you can just hold down Whirlwind. Now, there is another strategy if you want more of these bolts from materials to shoot out to tap it, but it doesn't really matter. I like the smooth gameplay of holding it down, halfway paying attention because we have 100k plus HP, which makes things, again, super smooth. And then if anything goes wrong, you really don't need to activate this at all, with the exception of, let's say, a pit boss and you have some of like the shadow things coming out or the Lilith blood waves that hit you. These are the only things that really make this build even take remotely any damage, because we get to heal on one of our shouts as long as it's active. What I find crazy is there's something called a raid leader, which gives us 3% of our maximum life every single second, and 3% of 100,000. Well, that's going to be quite a bit of HP, and so most of the time you almost never can even activate Iron Skin, but Iron Warrior is quite good because it also gives you Unstoppable, but it's just numerically the higher damage reduction one. The one with Bleed has a limit of 25 plus on bosses. It's kind of just, you know, activating once versus multiple times. But you could swap this aspect out here, but Iron Skin is just a really good thing to have as like a, oh no, I got hit by a Butcher or Lilith Blood Waves or anything that's gonna like kind of one-shot the rest of the roster. The Barbarian is so strong, it's gonna maybe do like 20-30% of your HP at most, but you just activate this and you'll bounce right back. And then for the technique, we're going to be running a two-handed axe. One other bonus and important tip is make sure that you select specifically the bludgeoning for your Whirlwind, because you want the bludgeoning bonus, not the two-handed sword or the two one-handers, because of the board that we're running in the Paragon board as well as in the skill tree. There's some stuff for two-handed that you want to make sure that you are actually running properly. But two-handed axe is much better because now we don't run bleed anymore. We used to run like the other aspect that would give us damage with some bleed off of our like base damage, but no longer is that going to be a viable option. So now that we went over the skills and how we kind of use them, let's go over the aspects and gear. So ideally you want to have Harlequin, but if you don't happen to have it, getting armor, strength, cooldown reduction, those are all great stats to go ahead and achieve for your helmet. Then we're running Tyrael's Might. Tyrael's Might is one of the best things on every single build in the game. And if you don't have this, you can run Ragnaros Boots because they will give you a bunch of resistances, or just get something that has resistance to all elements, ideally greater affix, so you don't have to get a lot of different resistances on other pieces of gear. But Tyrael Might is the ideal one to choose. Now, as far as in our gloves here, we just want crit strike chance, crit damage, strength, basically a bunch of offensive stuff. And you will need to reach a certain amount of damage while berserking. That's going to be in your Paragon board, as well as a couple pieces of gear to actually roll with it when you temper. So once you reach the bonus on the damage while berserking, you no longer need to get it. You can get crit damage or something else. I prefer crit because Grandfather gives you a massive bonus to it. But yeah, Edge Masters is great here, and then we can run Iron Warrior or any defensive aspect. Heck, you can throw in Tabalts, you can throw in a lot of different things. But just note that Tabalts, in order for it to proc properly, it does require you to be out of Unstoppable, then regain it. You can't just keep on activating Unstoppable, so that is a thing to note. But you can run whatever you want in the pants category. There really isn't like some godly pants to really run for the Barbarian here. You can run Tabalts or even Temerity when it recently got a buff this season, so if you want to run that too. And then you can also run Conceited instead of Elements for 100% uptime. It's up to you. And then Relentless Berserker's Aspect, it just kind of maintains the berserking over here, but you can honestly run a lot of other things. If you want another utility, Concussive, even more damage, that's fine, or even Penitent Greaves, those actually got a pretty nice buff of X25 damage. And then we're running the Dust Devil's Aspect over here, so more damage. Our main source of damage, by the way, isn't actually Whirlwind, although that is our skill that activates our damage, because we are getting these Dust Devils. That's the main point of the Whirlwind Barb is always going to be Dust Devils. They've tried to buff it several times, and I will probably make a build guide using the brand new like Gorse Devastating Grips, because they have really tried to get people to run the other thing, but the Dust Devils currently is the better variant as far as I'm aware of. But again, I'll update you guys with another build if we decide to actually make that one. I probably will make that one. It probably isn't as good, but the Dust Devils are essentially what gives us damage. So we're going to run Dust Devil's Aspect as well as the Devilish Aspect. So after we generate a bunch of fear, we're going to get more Dust Devils. And then we're also running Fierce Winds. Oh, also on a lot of the tempers, you may want to get damage while berserking. But another thing is the chance for Dust Devils to cast twice, or getting Dust Devil size. Keep in mind, there's a maximum size limit of 100% on your Dust Devils, so don't go past that. It won't give you extra bonuses past that. And then obviously also 100% chance for it to cast twice is the actual limit for that as well. So we also have Aspect of Fierce Winds, and then Ring of the Starless Skies really helps out with resources. If you don't happen to have this, you can run the one where if you have a Shout active, you're going to regen. So this build, by the way, is totally playable without Ubers, 100% fine. This is the first build I think in a while where, like, I would say even in the end game, like, the Barbarian is still really, really strong. It's just the endgame bosses, specifically in the higher Infernal Hordes, they do take a little bit of time. It's not as crazy as my billion damage like Rogue Poison Barrage variant, but the build is still pretty good, even without the Ubers, by the way. Like, it's playable. Then we have the Bold Chieftain, so we want to keep up our shouts as much as possible, so this really helps out. Then, obviously, Grandfather, just like every single build, it did actually receive a pretty nice buff, giving us 300% damage from where it used to be before. Got more life, and that's how we can get like 100k life. Again, pretty comfortably with this, and I'm not even fully min-maxed out yet. We could probably push this to 150k life, but it would require a lot more like HP nodes, and we'd probably get like greater aspects on like life. It's probably unnecessary, it's just for the sake of doing it. But you can see the Butcher chunked us for like 30% of HP. The brand new like Burning Butcher, he just does a lot of damage, and then like there's this like pool that he'll spawn, which you can honestly sit on. I'm sitting in most of the AoE, and it's not that bad if you're running this version. The other variants of like other builds, they're gonna have to kind of watch out for Butcher and the Lilith waves, but you can kind of tank them. But just don't expect to sit in all the AoE on the hardest difficulties and, you know, do nothing and just survive. But you could try. And then also Aspect of Elements. This one and Edge Masters are the two optional ones that you can play other things if you want to, whether you need anger management like aspect, or if you need extra resources, by all means, go ahead and put that in other areas. You can like move Fierce Winds or something like that. And then as far as the gems go, we're running emeralds, rubies, as well as skulls here. It's pretty much like on every single build. But if you need resistances, you can go ahead and fix that if you don't happen to have Tyraels, because that's kind of what Tyraels is used for. Like, Harlequin solves armor and gives you a bunch of, like, you know, damage reduction, and Tyraels is kind of like the same area. Like, these are just like the things that every endgame build would be running. It's Starless Skies, Harlequin, Tyraels. But with Barbarian, we also throw in Grandfather. And then as far as skill tree goes, so let me go ahead and make this bigger. You know, shout outs to my mobile viewers here. Let's go ahead and make this easier to view for you guys. So the first 2 skill points doesn't matter. Next up, we only put 1 point in Whirlwind. We want to get Furious, so it will actually give us a bleed. Now, there's another way that you can apply bleed. So it's up to you on how you want to actually play it. So I mentioned before, bludgeoning will be the bonus. If you want to, you can play it with slashing, which is going to be obviously with a sword. It will also do bleed damage this way. And the reason why you'd want the bleed is because there is a node called the No Mercy. Now, it gives you a bonus over here against Immobilized, Stunned, and Slowed. Now, you can also run Pentagreaves, Chill, and then slow the enemies. So there's a lot of flex with this, but I just wanted to put 1 point into here if you wanted to, because there's a couple extra points in this build. You can put another point into pressure points to activate your vulnerability if you want to, but I also put it in one of the rings over here, the chance to make enemies vulnerable. It's up to you on how you want to get it, but you can get it here. Or if you want to drop this point over here, you can apply bleed in another way. You can apply it at aspect. You can also apply it with thorns. It's up to you. But you do want to apply it in some sort of way because your bleeding effects will slow enemies by 20%. So it'll let this kind of be activated. So again, choose kind of the way that you want to apply bleed if you want to. You could technically run a slashing weapon. It's not the end of the world. But this is one area where it's kind of a flex. So you can remove a point if you want to run bludgeoning, like I recommended. But if you want to, you can play that as well. And then we are also going to be running, and this is kind of an optional point over there. And then we are going to run Imposing Presence, Martial Vigor, and then we are going to put 1 point into Rallying Cry and then 1 point into Enhance, just because we want to have the Unstoppable, which makes things quite nice. You don't need to put these in, but if you want to drop the point here, again, you will have to apply bleed in some sort of a way if you want like the extra bonus. But you could drop, I believe it's called No Mercy as well, if you want. But this is great to get. And then this will give you Unstoppable. And then we also have Challenging Shout, so it's going to taunt the enemies. And then this is where you're going to gain some extra maximum life. And this will make you go even crazier with HP. That number, by the way, wasn't even when I activated this, so we would have even more HP. Again, you can get to 150k plus, but past 100, I don't think it's really worth it unless you just want to show off. So this is the other option for bleed. So what you can do is you can remove a point. Let's actually do this because I think it's kind of important to mention, because I want to show you guys like the different options that you have if you want to. So I already have technically the way to apply a vulnerability, but if you want, you can put 1 point into this and then 1 point into this. It's just to make it so when enemies hit you, they are going to be affected by a bleed. So that's another way that you can apply bleed. It's up to you. How do you want to do it? You know, choose the one that you like. If you want the automated version, this is great. You could run the sword, but this is probably the like smoothest way without having to like lose damage, because putting on the sword one does lower your damage because you don't get to run the axe expertise. But Warcry, we want to put all the points into it. We only need 1 point because Harlequin will give us the extra points to make it a little bit better, to give it more cooldown, but this build has an incredible cooldown already. But this, you do want to try to activate this in a group because you will get even more damage, because it's going to give you an extra X10 as long as there are 6 enemies nearby. And then we're going to be running Raid Leader as well as Booming Voice, and then more movement speed, and then we want to run more damage reduction while berserking, and we're going to have 100% uptime in berserking. As you guys have seen, like, you never really drop your shouts. Then we're going to be running Prolific Fury over here, so while berserking we get extra generation. And then we're going to put points of No Mercy, Slaying Strike, as well as Pit Fighter. And then 1 point into Hamstring, so our bleed effects slow the enemies. And then Thick Skin, and then Counter Offensive. And then Heavy Handed, this is why I was recommending running the 2-handed one. And then also Wallop is great because it's another multiplier, and that's why we actually swap to this. Now, how are you going to apply Stunned? You can apply it in a couple different ways. You can roll it when you go ahead and actually get it on your tempers, on some of your defensive stats. That can be in your gloves, that can be in your pants, as well as your boots. And then also you can get concussion over here, because this will make it so when you're using a bludgeoning weapon, you have a chance to stun. So however you want to apply this, feel free to do it. I recommend, again, just getting the tempers is the easiest way, but you can run a couple other things. You can even run a slow in some of those tempers, so then your slow will then apply this, so then you can have it here. But it's up to you, guys. Strangely enough, this one works with stun, so you could just run stun and it would cover all of them. But if you want to mix it up so you can stagger the bosses, feel free to go ahead and do so. But it's not really like a build that really needs to try to stagger the bosses. But the bosses, they do have a little bit of HP. It's not like you're gonna one-shot the you know, a pit boss. Nowadays, it's a little bit harder to do that. Back in the previous seasons, yeah, it was much easier. Then with Call of the Ancients, we only need 2 points into it. You can get this one if you want like this extra power. It doesn't really matter. They don't really deal crazy damage anyways. But the last thing that we're doing, which is new, we used to do Gushing Wounds. It was super busted, but then they made it additive, so it basically lost a lot of damage. So Unconstrained is the way to go. And then as far as our Paragon Board, let's go ahead and go over that real quick. So as far as the Paragon Board, we're going to be starting out with Exploit. Then we're going to move up into Warbringer and Ire over here. And then we are going to go to the left and get Bonebreaker and Wrath. The order, by the way, with the Paragon doesn't really matter for Barbarian because you have so much into all stats now with like the Grandfathers being so powerful. Then we have Carnage, Might. And then we go into Blood, Rage, and Martial. Make sure that you reach this X30. This is important. If you already reach this, get crit damage and other things versus damage while berserking. But you get enough here for the most part to make it work well. But if you do need to get like 1 or 2 pieces of gear before that, definitely get it. But yeah, we pick up all the bonus to life nodes. I know it says like a certain amount of willpower, but it doesn't actually register properly on a lot of the builders because of your stats. And then we have Decimator and Twister over here. So this is actually working now. Now, there is another node where you can get extra, it's this one over here. Critical strikes increase our attack speed. So Whirlwind actually got buffed in Season 5, and what it will allow you to do is the attack speed will actually work with Whirlwind. But remember, Whirlwind doesn't deal damage. If you want to get this for other activations, it's not going to be like the end of the world. I mean, it's only a couple points over here if you want to reach it. But as far as I'm aware of, it does not work with the Dust Devils. As in, like, you don't spawn in more. Technically, the animation would be faster if you want to tap it, which is kind of optional. But I like the smooth gameplay of hold it down, spin to win. It's just much smoother. But if you want to get that, there's another option that I would go ahead and actually mention. But that's going to go ahead and wrap up the build. And again, if you want to play the variant with Wrath of Berserker, go for it. They're both very good. And if you want to know my recommendation, I would probably run Wrath of Berserker once my damage is high enough, and I feel like it's really good because you just get smoother experiences because you have extra movement speed while you actually have it. You also get Unstoppable. And then also you can consider running Penitent Greaves because, again, since I have so much HP, I didn't really feel like I needed the defensive category, like in terms of like the defensive aspect for the pants. So I put Relentless Berserker on it and another build, and then I ran Penitent Greaves. That's another way to play the build if you want to, but for the recommendation of most people, I'd probably recommend starting off with Bash Barb if you want to level, then graduate into this, and then run Iron Warrior because, again, some of the bosses will chunk you out, and this will really help out. But anyways, guys, that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for the build guide. Let me know what you think of it if you've played the Barbarian with this build. I think it's really, really good this season, and I actually thought it was going to be completely ruined because they just like nerfed specifically the Gushing Wounds, but it's still alive, and we can absolute dominate content with, again, 100k HP. Most of the game's content is pretty easy at this point. But if there's any questions or suggestions, let me know in the comment section below. But check the pin, and I will be updating this guide, and I'll link both of the different variants down below in the pin. But thanks for watching. If you guys enjoyed it, drop a like on the way, and subscribe if you guys want to see an update to this build if we need to update. And I think I will also try to make a like Gore's Devastating Grip variant to see if we can actually make a true Whirlwind Barb, as they're all Dust Devils at the moment. But anyways, take care. See you in the next video. Peace.